Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Bobby Hammz here with my review of Disney Plus's The Mandalorian, episode 8. Now this episode is titled The Redemption. It's the season finale of this first season. And I think it's an appropriate title because the series really redeemed itself from the very poor start that I thought it had. So let's begin with the stormtroopers from the previous episode. And they already have Yodalay in their custody. And they stop off at the edge of town and they're waiting for permission, basically, or clearance to go back into town. While they're waiting around there, they're talking with each other about whatever things. And there's this very funny target practice gag that gets played out where there's this one like can or something on the ground, and they try to hit it with their blasters, and it can't be more than 5 feet, 6 feet away from them, but they just can't hit the thing. And the video camera is placed on the ground so you can see it from the can's point of view pointing up at them, and they're just like so far to the wide right and wide left and shooting past it and hitting the ground in front of it, and it's just a pathetic display, but it's a very funny gag, a very funny visual gag to show you how bad the stormtroopers are. And they even stop to check their guns during this whole thing, and it's like, no, I don't know if is it your weapons or is it the helmets? How come you guys are so terrible that you're shooting? So that little scene ends with the target practice ends, and the IG droid shows up, because I think it was traveling with Quill before. I don't know where it came from actually, now that I think of it. But anyway, it shows up and demands Yodalay to be returned because now it's its nurse and protector. Of course, the stormtroopers don't agree to that to that idea, and the IG droid takes care of them handily and takes one of their bikes, their space bikes, and heads towards town. Meanwhile, back at the bar in town, Moff Gideon reveals that Mandalorian's real name is Din Djarin, Carano's real name is Cara Cynthia Dune of Alderaan, and Weathers' real name is Grieve Karga. While hyping up this weapon called the E-Web Repeat Blaster, I guess that would vaporize the building that they're in, it turns out that Moff Gideon was also behind the attack on Mandalorian's home until some Mandalorians came to the rescue. Now, this connection between the hero and the villain has been done thousands of times already, so I didn't really care for it that, the guy that is after the kid Mandalorian is protecting just happened to be the same guy that killed, his family or village or whatever. I didn't really care for that, but whatever. I guess it keeps the storytelling very simple, easy to follow that way. And also, Mandalorian turns out is not a race of people or a species, it's a creed, like Apollo Creed. And so the IG droid is tearing through the town and just murdering all manner of stormtroopers on its way. I mean, it's just blasting down everything. And the way it's able to spin around and see, behind it and shoot behind it, it's pretty cool for the droid, but it's just mowing down all these stormtroopers. Yodalay is just laughing at the massacre in front of it. It's kind of funny actually. And so as Mandalorian, Weathers, and Carano are trying to escape the bar and they're trying to figure out a way out of there, they discover a vent in the bar that leads down to the sewer system, but they can't, get past the vent. It's either too heavy or it's sealed on there into the wall. So as they're working that thing out, the droid gets closer to Moff Gideon and his troops there. So their attention gets drawn to the droid, and a shootout briefly takes place when Mandalorian, Weathers, and Carano, they try to take advantage of the chaos and escape. But in the midst of this whole shootout, this whole pretty intense scene, Mandalorian is shot in the head, which he's got helmet on, so it's not too bad. But he's shot in the head by Moff, and they're all forced back into the bar. With Mandalorian injured, the IG droid starts to cut away at the grate covering the entrance to the sewer system below. Now the theory is that they could use that sewer system in order to find the Mandalorian covert, which was, I believe, introduced in episode 1, or maybe it was 2, which could help them, eventually leave the town. So Mandalorian thinks he's a goner and urges the others to watch over Yodalay while he holds off Moff's offensive, while this flamethrower dude incinerates the front portions of the bar, because I think the E-Web repeater weapon was destroyed during that shootout. But there's a bunch of back and forth with Mandalorian saying that he'll stay behind and Carano arguing otherwise, and that went on a little too long, and it felt like it continued through the rest of the episode, later on with the armorer, and then later on with the IG droid on the river of lava. It was very noticeable and felt repetitive. But back to the bar, the flamethrower dude arrived at the front door and let off another blast. And because of all the aforementioned back and forth, no one actually left through the open grate that the IG droid was able to cut through finally. Then as the fire drew nearer, Yodalay, like a boss, created some sort of protective barrier. I think I'll call it a force field. Yodalay not only kept them from becoming a Mortal Kombat fatality, but it pushed the fire back towards the flamethrower dude, blowing him up immediately. Now, the horrors this kid has seen guarantees therapy at this point. There's no way around it. So they made it down to the sewers and found their way to the covert after a couple minutes of walking around aimlessly. Except that they see a pile of Mandalorian armor and helmets. So my first thought was, oh wow, they've been wiped out. And sure enough, the armor comes out of left field and explains that the covert made itself an overt target when the Mandalorians went public and helped DeLorean escape in episode 1. So it was pretty cool to see that there was some continuity there with the actions that took place in the first episode are now backfiring literally in the last episode. So I like that. That was pretty good storytelling right there. So while they're down there with the armor, DeLorean gets a new weapon, a Rocketeer jetpack like all the other Mandalorians had, and flashback there, and also a new signet, and was basically told that he's Yodalay's foster dad until he can reunite Yodalay with its kind. And the armor also gave a healthy shout out to the Jedi as being these ancient sorcerers with strange powers who are enemies of the Mandalorians. When I think it was Carano or Weathers, someone was saying what the kid was able to do, with these mind powers. So I was like, oh yeah, Jedi, I know the Jedi, that's pretty cool. And so the stormtroopers started to close in on this, what's left of the covert now, and the armor and their position. So, they had a little more of that back and forth where DeLorean was like, hey, come with us. And the armor was like, no, I got to stay here until the job is done. And that back and forth seemed to go on a little bit too long also, like I said previously. And so they eventually did leave, and they made it to this river of lava and realized there were stormtroopers guarding the exit because of course there would be stormtroopers guarding the exit. Why wouldn't there be? And so the IG droid reached a conclusion, like any, I guess, robot would, that they wouldn't make it alive if it didn't self-destruct. Now, to me, that makes perfect sense, because earlier, while the IG droid was healing DeLorean's head injury, they had to take the helmet off, and so DeLorean was like, hey, I can't let you take this helmet off because no living thing can see my face. And the IG droid explicitly said, I'm not a living thing. So we get to see DeLorean's face, or Pedro Pascal's face, for the first time in the series. So back to this lava thing, the droid is like, yeah, I gotta self-destruct in order to make sure that you all make it safely, to where you gotta go. But then DeLorean suddenly didn't want the droid to destroy itself, even if it meant sacrificing the safety of the others, because they had nowhere to go. They're on this river of lava, in this tunnel, so they can't just step out and just walk somewhere else. They had to go until the end of this tunnel. There's no going backwards. And so the droid is like, yeah, I gotta get out of here and blow myself up and then give you guys a way out. DeLorean's like, no, you can't do that all of a sudden. And I didn't really get the logic there with him, because he kind of hated droids for most of his life. So it just seemed like a very sudden and just jarring 180 for him to make. Be like, oh no, I'm not sad for you to go. I didn't get that at all. But anyway, the droid stepped out of the boat and into this river of lava and walked 20 or 30 feet in this river of lava without getting completely melted down in this river of lava. And I didn't think it would have made it nearly as far because, it's lava, and lava tends to melt metal pretty quickly. But I guess this lava was only room temperature, so it was fine. It wasn't too bad at all. So the droid gets to the tunnel's opening, and the stormtroopers are there, and they're ready to fire on them. It makes some kind of declaration about not being allowed to be taken alive. And it blows itself up, and it killing more stormtroopers. And I swear, there are so many stormtroopers killed in this episode. It felt like comically gratuitous. It was just like everywhere you go, everywhere you turn, there's a stormtrooper being murdered. It was just like the craziest thing. So many dead bodies. So, well, they made it to the end of the tunnel. So they're free, right? Like, no, not quite yet. Because DeLorean has this new toy, this new jetpack. So he has to try it. So cue Moff Gideon bearing down on them from above in his TIE fighter. And he let off a couple shots at his stationary targets on the ground who were at the opening of this tunnel and behind no cover, and he missed every one of them. And after seeing that, I really didn't know if it was a callback to the Stormtrooper gag at the beginning of the episode, with the troopers not being able to hit that stationary can that definitely was not moving, because these folks at the end of the tunnel there, they were not moving at all. So, and they were on the ground. So I don't know if that was what's going on there, just kind of like a parallel between the Stormtroopers and Moff Gideon, or maybe it's just the weapons were made by the same people, and so that's why they can't hit anything. Or if it was plot armor for the characters themselves, which I hear plot armor is a lot better than Beskar armor, so maybe that's why Moff Gideon wasn't able to hit anything. But it was odd to watch him fire off so many shots from a clear advantage point and not be able to hit a single thing. It was strange to see. And so when this is going on, he flies off, in order to make a return trip. And Weathers suggests that they make the baby do the magic hand thing. And he waves at Yodalay and is like, "Hey, baby, do the magic hand thing." And Yodalay just kind of waves back, like, "Hi." Which again, pretty funny part of the episode there. So anyway, Moff Gideon is headed back towards them, and DeLorean puts on his jetpack, flies up, uses a little grappling thing to latch himself onto the wing of the TIE fighter, and he's able to plant a charge on one of the wings. The wing explodes, Moff Gideon crashes, the trio say their goodbyes, DeLorean takes off on his ship, and Moff is shown cutting his way out of the wreckage with this really cool looking laser sword deal, and then he stands on the wreckage of the ship against the sunlight, posing for I guess an action figure, I guess. And then the episode ends. Although it fulfilled its purpose of providing some answers to a lot of the questions raised during the previous 7 episodes, like DeLorean's backstory, and does he have a face under that mask, and identifying the main villain. This episode did not feel like a season finale. It felt a little bit underwhelming. Now, it may have been because of the several instances of the whole, "You go without me, we're not leaving you behind. You gotta go without me, we're not leaving behind. Come with me, I gotta stay here, leave me behind." Maybe that's what it was. It slowed down the action a little bit too much for me in the middle. But also nothing game-changing really happened. Just like in all the other episodes, DeLorean protected Yodalay from some bad guys. There was a shootout, and then DeLorean and Yodalay escaped. But I guess now Moff Gideon came out of the shadows, and he's like the big bad guy. But he was beaten with a jetpack and one explosive charge, so major threat for season 2 somehow? I don't really see it. Anyway, this was a decent episode. Yodalay was the undisputed MVP. Undisputed MVP. I guess he's really undisputed MVP of the whole series, because I don't think people would have kept watching this show if Baby Yoda was not on this show. If Yodalay was not in every episode of this TV show, I don't think it would have maintained its viewership, because that little thing is cute as hell, and it made the show, I think. I mean, the whole concept of a Star Wars Western style TV show is good, and using the Mandalorian as the vehicle to tell that Western story is also a good idea. But the pacing and some of the stories, it's kind of repetitive and not very engaging a lot of times. But you having Yodalay there for some of the comedy beats and just for the overall just adorableness of everything really lifted it up to just more enjoyable than it probably would have been without Yodalay. I still think episodes 6, 5, 7, and 3 were a lot better than this one, but on its own, it's pretty good. It's not a bad thing. Season 2 is currently slated to premiere in the fall of 2020, so it's less than a year's wait to see what happens with this next chapter of the show, which must mean that they're either working on it right now or will begin production very soon. So I know, like I said, overall, I like this first season, and it turned out to be a good flagship program for Disney Plus. It was very on brand, not a lot of, the violence was not bloody or gory or too scary for kids. It was enjoyable for adults as well. The humor was there, the production value, of course, and it was all very entertaining. And because of all that, the episodes themselves have a lot of replayability. You can watch them several times over and over. Maybe not episodes 1 and 2, because those 2 were well beyond redemption. So that's going to wrap it up for my coverage of this first season of Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Like and subscribe if you'd like to like and subscribe to things. This is Bobby Hammz signing off. Peace.